And we move Willie to auto. Not because he's sort of fabulous.
Hi, are you guys able to hear us?
I can hear you, Jamie.
Yes, we are.
Perfect. Okay. Just playing around with the mute here. Okay, if we're ready to get started, Brianna and Paula will do their presentation.
So that was pretty good. I like. So I've been with the state. Hold on just a second. I gotta be here. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Let me try this.
Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Jamie.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Okay, we're no longer echoing in the room, so we're good. So I started with the state in 2010, and actually I was an eligibility worker. So I started out as an eligibility worker processing. Back then it was SRS, DCF, medical, food stamps, childcare, all the good stuff. But medical's always been kind of the place of my heart, and long-term care specifically. So I've been doing that, like I said, since 2010, just kind of worked myself up into the position that I'm at now, and get to work with you all and help streamline and educate individuals to help our fellow Kansans and make sure, hopefully, it's just as painless as possible, although we all know that the Medicaid process can be cumbersome sometimes. So,
Paula Morgan, I work for KDADS. I'm the HCBS Administrative Manager. My team does waiver eligibility for all 7 waivers, soon to be 8 waivers, as soon as we get the CSW up and running. I started out in special education and foster care, and I am now here.
I don't know why I shove it to the end. That's not all right, you can click through. And again.
Okay, so our objective for this training is to understand how we do the 3160, which is the essentially onboarding of a person onto the waiver eligibility wise. And then the 3161, which communicates changes. And so we've made some amendments to our current form, and our training will clarify what those are, including the submission to KDADS for final approval, for final waiver type approvals, before we then, KDADS, we send the form on to KDHE for their final processing.
All right, so the 3160 form, this screenshot here is the newest version of the form that will be available July 1st on the policy website. So anytime you use the 3160 form, staff should be pulling it from the website. It's can be updated. We try to share that information, but it will always be published when it's updated. If it's just a tiny little thing and it doesn't impact people, we don't normally blast things out because it's a date or it's a formatting thing. But if there are significant changes, we do try to send some blast out and then make sure that us at KDADS and KDHE jointly get that information to people.
I'm sorry, people are saying that they're not seeing the slides online.
You're not seeing it.
Oh, I didn't share us. Yeah.
Oh. Can you go back?
I'm glad you guys are catching that. Yes.
I do have one question while they're working
Yeah.
on that. So you said it goes July 1st.
Yes.
Would you like for us to use it June 30th?
We will not publish it until July 1st.
So we use the old one the first day, and then the next day we do the,
Well, but, I mean, can't we just hold anything that needs to be submitted until the next time?
I mean, they still have to use the form.
But most of the time, a lot of the ones will be generated from KDHE. So we will send you the 3160 and we're going to send you that version all the way through June 30th
Oh, okay.
because it will not change until
So
July 1st.
use what they sent us,
Use what they said.
regardless of the date.
There we go.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Because the process will still be captured. It's just we cleaned up some stuff so that the process makes more sense on the form, but we publish the first of the month too. So that's why it's a July 1st. So if you go to the website right now, which I put this little tiny link down here to the website, I'm not sure if that link will break or not once we upload the new version. So it's always best to go straight to the website, which I can show you guys how to do that as well. But
All right.
that
This is good.
Microsoft is having fun with you right now.
We were just talking about that.
Back to that. But this is the new and improved 3160 form. It looks pretty similar to what it has previously looked. We did add some information like an assessment date. That date was not previously listed there, so sometimes there was confusion on some of the dates. But this form should be used. It's used by KDHE staff when we send the referral. It can be used by the MCO. They can send a referral. It can be used by if the consumer comes straight to Liberty or Maximus First. Basically, any of us involved in this process can initiate the form, which is section 1. Is this a script? It's not a screen touch, is it?
No.
What is happening? But section 1 is to fill out the information. Section 2 is to explain or report out the functional eligibility piece. Section 3 is for KDADS. I'm like, I accidentally touched the screen, but. Section 3 is for KDADS. Section 4 is for the MCO. And then section 5 is for KDHE eligibility. So each entity has their own little section. Section 1 is used by everyone. Like I said, it really is the communication process for the entire functional piece, all the way through to the eligibility piece, including wait lists so that we're aware of that. And it's also used with the MCO to communicate with KDADS and others for institutional transitions. Okay. Like I said, section 1 of the 3160, anybody can fill that section out. Any of our entities that's involved in the process can fill this out. It has the consumer's information. We need to make sure that we use KIMS or KMAP as the source of truth. So if you're the one that's initiating it, that's the source of truth for date of birth, social security numbers, Medicaid numbers. I do want to call out something about the Medicaid numbers because there's always been confusion about the Medicaid numbers. In our KEYS system, it can be 0, 0, 0, blah, 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 blah. In Kim's, it's 001, always 001. So we shouldn't be kicking the forms back and forth just because the one's missing. It should just be common knowledge and assumptions that it's 001. And you can always pull it in KIMS or KMAP if someone is known to KIMS or KMAP. If they've never had coverage before, then you can't find it. If it's 000, you can add the one if you need to. So this is just an example of a fully completed form. We do ask that it is fully completed as best as possible. We know sometimes maybe you don't have the Medicaid ID number. That's okay. As long as we can match the name, date of birth, and social security number, we can put it in workflow. If we can't align that, if something's not lining up or the stuff is missing, we will send a rejection email saying that it can't be placed into workflow. However, due to changes that's coming July 1, shouldn't impact you all too much because everything will kind of go through KDADS with the exception of some 3161s, which we'll talk about later. The 3161 will be completed and then sent to the appropriate KDADS mailbox. So something that's different if some of you are familiar with the processes or you've looked at the material before, there are some waivers that would go to KDADS and have to go through to them. Some of them could come to KDHE. They're all through KDADS now. So it should simplify it for workers. But if we get a 3160 in the mailbox from anyone other than the MCO or KDADS, we will reject it and we'll send a rejection email, which I'm working on some language on that so it can be a little bit more clear. Anything else you want to add on this slide? You got a question?
I do. So since it's changed to going to KDADS, there is no reason we would send a 3160 to KDHE mailbox anymore.
3160s? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
3161s.
It's just different,
Right.
but-
You'll go to, there's two paths on 3161s, but 3160s, no.
Okay, that's helpful.
So like I said, it should be a lot easier for staff. All right, next slide.
Section 2?
Yeah.
Okay, so section 2 is going to be completed by the assessing entity or the contracted entity unless the contracted entity doesn't have that in their contract. For instance, IDD doesn't have completing 3160s in their contract, so then KDADS eligibility does that piece. But this will be you guys's for FE, PD, and BI. So you'll complete everything in there. Make sure that you have completed all the information, and then once you've completed that on the 3160, then you send a KDADS to the appropriate email box, waiver email box. And it's really important that you get the program type correct, because sometimes that can create unintended delays and consequences. And it's just always good that before you hit send, verify that you've completed it correctly. Any questions? Yes.
For the applicant MCO choice, do they get that from a certain section for that drop down?
So sometimes that'll come in, won't that come in? If a KDHE worker completes it, they'll go ahead and collect whichever MCO was, like if it comes in as an application.
We'll compare what's in section 2 with what's on the application. So it was my understanding that during I don't know if it was options counseling or what part of the process it was, but previously when it was with the AAAs, that would be part of the discussion. I don't know what step of the discussion that took place, but that was part of the discussion, and they would indicate the MCO selection in section 2. If section 2 MCO selection doesn't align with what they asked on the application, we'll use whatever is the later one. So if the 3160 was submitted after the app, we'll use that. If the application was submitted after the 3160, we'll use the application.
So if somebody already has an MCO, presumably it'll be, and they want to stay with that MCO, it would be the same.
Yeah, because we can't, there's
You're not
open
changing.
enrollment, right. We
That's what I
can't
thought.
change
Okay, I
it.
just wanted to.
Yep.
Yeah, so if somebody's brand new and they don't have one yet, that's where that would be important. to make
That's
sure
more
that-
important, yeah.
That it's in there, but if they already have one, because they're already enrolled in Medicaid, but they may be going on waiver. Okay.
Yep.
And going back to what Brianna said about KMAP, KMMS being the record of truth, that information, if they have an MCO assignment, that will be in there. So,
We did have a question in the chat. If we'll still be using the 3160 for PACE as well.
I did the same thing to him. and He said the same thing.
There's no changes right now to it from my understanding.
Just wanted to
If
verify.
it's like the initial and it's not through the 3166 form, so.
And I have a question. If the MCO choice isn't, if we can't get that information, will that reject?
No.
Okay.
No, we'll only reject the 3160s if it's sent to us in error or if there's missing identifiable information. And for Paula's team, I'm sure you're looking for specific information, but you have KMIS to review to fill in any blanks.
we have KMS and
I do have one
Came out.
question. And this is a real unique low number of scenarios, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So do you guys have people who, for whatever reason, might not have a social yet because they're refugee status or something like that we need to worry about?
Not a lot, I mean,
It's probably
I-
really rare. Every once in a while it pops up and then people ask.
I
me
haven't
something
seen a lot of that.
no.
Because when they're applying, it's just general Medicaid, not HCBS.
like, okay,
Social in your term.
Have you seen anything like that? Yeah. So,
okay. I figured, but I just wanted to ask, thank you, because it will come up.
Okay, and that's a good question because if you're not necessarily on this form, but if you're inputting information into KMS and you leave out that social, there will be a flag message that comes up
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's an important piece. For instance, sometimes what happens in the system is that some information might not be in KMS correctly. And so when the approval comes over from KDHE for waiver coding and their system in the overnight feed is looking to match it up with what's in KMS and they can't find it, it creates a new file, which then creates duplicate files. So it's really important for this information to be in KMS correctly.
Question I have, Paula, in the comments section, in the past, the AAAs would put like level of care scores with the ADLs, IDLs, and the total. Is that necessary or what? do you want?
It's not necessary from what I understand because my eligibility team will still go in and verify that the information that this person is actually functionally eligible.
yeah, and we do, on the eligibility side, we don't even know what those scores mean. I'll be honest, we don't look at them at all.
I wondered.
In case we need that score.
Okay.
We take off the that score to determine whether or not they're eligible for PACE.
Okay, so
We do need it.
so you're not verifying in KMS that, I mean, like looking at all the scores?
They'll look at both because we've even seen sometimes where the scores don't jive.
Okay, so Mary is saying for PACE, that needs to be included for HCBS, not necessarily, so.
Put it if you want to, you don't have to. That's kind of.
That's right, but it's not, but for KDHE,
One of the consultants is going to respond back and say, we need that score.
okay. So for HCBS, if it's not put in, KDADS won't reject it and KDHE won't reject it.
Now, Mary, your team is verifying it in KMS though, because that's supposed to be the system of record to make sure it's correct there.
Yes.
Okay.
But we've had some things just in the last couple of weeks that there's no score.
Okay, that it's not,
No score.
okay.
Just saying, yeah, they did it.
So if it's not in Camus, how would,
I don't know.
If they haven't entered it in Camus, then theoretically, KDADS cannot verify that the assessment was completed, so we would have to reject it.
And then I just want to note, since I know some of you or some people that will be filling out these forms possibly have filled out these forms before. So assessment date, like I said before, that is a new field. It used to say choice date, and we took that all out. The assessment date is important. Without that assessment date, KDHE staff won't know if they've had an assessment within the last year. And as you know, sometimes they get denied, then they come back. Well, that prompts another 3160, and you're like, wait, why are you sending me another one? Well, if we don't know what the assessment date is, and we're relying on this date, it causes discrepancies. So that's why we put it on there. It has nothing to do with when their HCBS will start. Their HCBS will start the day they're financially eligible, the day we process, with the exception of the institutional transitions. But that date is important. Anything else on this section?
Services request withdrawn, is that, if you go inside on what that means, or if that's something you're looking for?
So usually when that happens, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong on that, it's when you go out, do the assessment, and then they say, man, I don't really want it anymore. So they're basically withdrawing it.
Do we need to have a signed statement from them saying they're withdrawing it?
Something.
It's probably always best, because then you have it on file, because then they can come back and say, I didn't say that.
Is there a form or something that you guys?
No, we take verbal. We don't require them to sign off on it. We just take verbal.
Okay.
But you all can decide
Yeah, I was
how
gonna
you
say,
would want
we
that to
probably
be.
Well,
We'll do
Because there
something.
has been some back and forth like that before.
we'll take it back and we'll probably create a form for approval.
Yeah, just to.
Because I'm, a massive form keeper, and
Yeah, I was gonna say we're gonna want something.
and I know that sometimes legal can get involved and Disability Rights Center can get involved. And if you have something that backs up, yes, we spoke with this person signed off there, then you have that as your document to present. Yes, we did our due diligence, and they said no.
All right, slide.
Okay, so this is the KDADS section where all the waivers have to be approved by KDADS in order for a person to onboard onto a waiver. And so the program manager's name, phone number, the type, whether it's approved or denied or waitlisted, will be indicated. And this waitlisted piece is a new ad. Before it was captured, I think, in section 2 with the assessment. And since KDADS is the one that approves waitlist, then that was brought down into our section. So if we approve it, we're going to put the effective date there. If we deny it, we're not going to put an effective date because it's the date that we worked it. We'll put in whatever comments that, I don't know how much your workers care about those comments, but, for instance, if it's a transition from autism to IDD or whatever it is, we'll go ahead and put comments like that in there. Or if it was like a waitlist offer approval, then put that in there, and then the person who completes it and the date set. So.
A question, if this isn't the time, if it goes in another section, let me know. But if somebody's on PD waiver and let's say they're heading toward aging, do they automatically age into FE waiver?
No.
Okay,
Now, if they're on the PD waiver,
they can stay on the PD.
they can stay on the PD waiver. They get a choice. It's
Okay.
not an auto transfer.
Thank you.
So, and any other questions about this page? Okay.
Next section is section 4. It's the MCO information. There's generally not a lot of time that the MCOs needing to fill this section out and sending it. And if they do, it comes straight to us. And it's usually involving the need for cost of care. When they send the referral, they could potentially put some information in here when they send the referral. But really, the only main piece as far as the eligibility factor for KDHE is meeting the cost of care for those individuals who have income over a certain threshold. But this section's pretty relatively easy. It's probably used more during institutional transition than any other time. But that's between KDADS and the MCO and I believe assessing entities. So next slide. Section 5 is the eligibility information. We simplified this section too because I think there's sometimes confusion. People can be approved or maybe they already have Medicaid and then we're denying it. So then you see an approval, but then a denial. So we cleaned this section up and this is specific only to HCBS. So they can have Title 19, they can have a Medicare savings program or whatever the case may be. This is only in response to the HCBS request, which will be approval, denial, or wait list. The effective date, generally, the effective date here and the date it completed should align, should match. We do quality edits and things like that. So there's times where maybe you get a 3160 later after the fact when we don't have proof that we sent it. We keep copies of the entire 3160. What you've probably noticed, or if you've never worked with them before, once the 3160 gets back into our imaging system, we lose the PDF version of it. So you'll see possibly like it's not fillable anymore. So you'll see maybe they did a strike through where they just typed it in. That's why you see it that way. It's acceptable. It shouldn't create any problems. You'll see it on the 3160 ones as well. We're not going to regenerate new forms. We just take it from our system and add this. It should be pretty clear, approved, denied, or waitlisted. Usually, from my understanding, workers should be putting this email address. It's that generic email address for the 3160 mailbox. We ask that your staff, please don't go back and forth with eligibility workers. If we send a 3160 referral or an approval, denial, whatever the case may be, if you're confused, if you're not sure, if you have questions, if you're like, hey, they already have an assessment, please don't reply back to the KDHE workers. That information can come straight to me at this point. KDADS also has the ability to send or to review and send to our quality team. I would rather be the one going back and forth and trying to get everybody in alignment than trying to get, I don't know how many staff you guys will have, but 300 staff on the same page. So please don't reply to the workers, and our workers shouldn't be replying back and forth either, other than potential status checks. However, I think we're going to do all status checks through KDADS now instead of through assessing entities. So that should be reduced as well.
So I have, because you talked about the PDF, and sometimes we get in forms from assessing entities, and they have, in a sense, they've changed the form by locking it, which then makes it difficult for anyone else down the line to put their information in. So, if you have, say, in section 2, the assessing entity has put their information, but then they locked, and I say there because it's actually not their document, it's KDHE's document. So that sections 3 through 5, it's difficult for anyone else to enter that information. Please don't do that.
And PPOCs, it happens a lot on the PPOCs for whatever reason. We'll get the PPOC, but then we go to open it and it says we don't have the right. So however the people are saving it is causing problems. So make sure that there's nothing like locked down on your side when you do those PPOCs.
Because then it causes a delay for everyone. And sometimes, when you get a high volume and it's a really busy day, and then the day just goes clunks because then you can't do your job.
Just to verify, because we have another question here. The effective date is the date the financial eligibility is determined, correct? It's not going to be backdated to the assessment date.
It is generally not backdated. Institutional transitions is the exception to that rule. Also, come July 1st, there's another policy change for our review reconsideration periods, where we used to just send the reinstatement. So if it's involved with the review reconsideration, you could see some retro, because that policy is saying, hey, if you don't turn in your review timely, we're no longer automatically backdating you. We're treating you as an application. With applications, HCBS doesn't backdate. However, there is a slight little exception to that policy that if they request prior medical, we will still be able to get them on the HCBS, so there's no gap. But this could create some extra for all of us, because there could be instances where they're just not eligible in those months prior. It shouldn't cause a need for a 3060, but it's possible. So generally speaking, HCBS doesn't backdate. Institutional transition is always the exception, with a little caveat with the new policy that we're not exactly sure how we're going to be impacted 100% yet.
And waiver to waiver wouldn't either?
Right, waiver to waiver.
Would or wouldn't?
Yeah, we go off of the date that KDADS approves, so it could be. So
Okay.
if KDAD says you're transitioning from the PD waiver to the FE waiver, and you're doing it June 1st, and we're working it today, we will transition it June 1st. So waiver to waiver and institutional transition are the big ones. Any other questions on that? Any other questions on the 3160 form in general before we move to the 3161? So a couple major big changes is 3160s will always go to KDADS. So winning, because that makes it easier for everyone, operationally anyways. Not sure for Paula's team, but I guess it's not much of a difference.
It'll create efficiencies in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. So that's one of the big changes. And then the form itself is different. That's one of the big changes come July 1st. So pretty much it on the 3160. So we will move on to the 3161. This one is pretty significant changes, especially for anyone who has worked with the ADRCs previously or been involved with this process. So previously, the 3161s did not look like this. There was like 3 sections, 4 sections. Everybody has their own section. It looks very similar to the 3160 now. The reason why we did that is because the assessing entities can no longer request termination or reinstatements. So there are still some items that can be reported straight from the ADRC to KDHE, because we have to verify some information anyways. But there's only a handful, and we'll go over the forms. And there's drop downs. Oh, it's got to be a touch screen. Go back. There we go. Oh wait, back. There we go. So the form is quite different. I think it's simplified. It makes it a little bit cleaner on what we're trying to accomplish here. As far as, are we reinstating? Are we terminating? What exactly is going on? Section 1 is pretty much the same as what it is on the 3160. Fill it out as best as possible. Again, as long as there's enough identifying information for us to say, yep, this is the right person, we'll put it in workflow. If things are missing completely, where we just have a name, we will not accept just the name. It is impossible to find the person by just the name to make sure we have the right one. So fill it out as best as possible. For these people, they should be open and active. So you should have all the information that comes available for you, or KMAP, to fill out that section. Again, it could be 00 or it could be 001. Same thing with the Medicaid ID number, regardless of which form. Anybody can initiate this form, meaning assessing entities, MCOs, KDADS, or KDHE. You'll see these forms from KDHE. You should see them every time HCBS is closed. And there's a handy dandy link there. Again, this form won't be available until July 1st, but that link is to the website. We should always be pulling the form from the website in case there are any additional changes to the form, so that we're all using the most current form. We still have 3161s in flow right now. And prior to this form and prior to KDADS needing to sign off on all approval denials, reinstatements, anything that's in workflow right now through basically end of day June 30th, we will accept as is and process accordingly. Come July 1st, we will no longer accept 3161s from assessing entities that's not using this form to designate if they're trying to report a change or request termination. So July 1st is a big date for these changes. So we will reject those and not even put them in workflow of an assessing entities trying to report something to us that they are not allowed to report to us, such as loss of functional eligibility. But we'll go over that in more details. Everybody has their own section. They'll go from the assessing entity, for majority of them, to KDADS, KDADS to us. If it's one where you can report a change in circumstance, I think there's like 4 potential scenarios. Those can come straight to KDHE. To the appropriate mailbox, 3161 mailbox.
For the reporting changes, is it a drop down like in the other areas? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pull up the version of the form so that you can see them after we're done with presenting all of it. Let me go to the next slide. All right, so I believe I'm supposed to do the left side. Yes. This is part of your drop downs here. You'll want to review KMAP first, because sometimes we get a 3161 reporting a death when we already closed them and KMAP already has the date of death. Please don't send us another 3161 telling us that they died. We already closed them. It's just cumbersome. It's just extra work that's not necessary. So please, please, please make sure you're checking KIMS or KMAP first. If you don't see the date of death or the closure, if you still see active coverage, that's when you would initiate the 3161. For ones that can come straight to KDHE, that's the mailbox. We have one mailbox for 3160s, one mailbox for 3161s. Please use the right one. It helps us with our workflow and making sure that we can keep everything on target. The assessing entities can report a date of death to us. They can report admission to an institution. Let's say they go to jail or I guess incarceration jail. Institution could be, let's say they go to Meadowbrook or a nursing facility. You can report that, and then you can report that they moved out of state. Those are the 4 things that you can report directly to KDHE. Some people might be thinking, well, why? Well, because we have to go verify it anyways. We can't take your word for it. We have policies that we have to follow to go double check any of those things. So you sending it to us actually could help prompt the process, because sometimes we don't learn about these things until 3 months later.
Yeah, I talked to Brittany, your night nurse last night.
Oh.
Right.
Someone mute, please.
Got it. Sorry.
All right. So anything that's not death, admission to an institution, incarceration, moved out of state, should not come straight to KDHE. Please, we don't need 3161s to tell us a phone number change or an address change. If a phone number change or address change, tell the consumer to log on to the KDHE website. They can report it right there on that little bot. It comes up, they can just type it in there. That's the preferred method, honestly, because then it's just automatically done. It's a systematic thing. Nobody has to touch it. The system just does it. If that's not possible, ask them to call the 1-800 number, please. Don't send 3161s for that. Again, we can't take your word for it, so you're creating extra work. If the person calls in, we can do it right then and there. No extra work. Or, like I said, we really encourage the use of our website and that little bot down there that says, are you trying to report a change? So we encourage that. It has to be the individual, though, not like you can't do it for the individual. You can help the individual, but they need to be the ones that are doing it and reporting it. All right, you're up.
So this part, reporting to KDADS, is whenever a person's situation changes that is directly related to waiver eligibility. Like the client wants to discontinue being on waiver, lost contact, they didn't meet functional eligibility, and that could be they didn't meet the minimum required score, or they just were kind of like a no call, no show. And you went through the process of trying to get them to do the assessment, and they didn't. And that's the no longer eligible, failure to complete. This completed functional assessment remains eligible. The annual assessment, you guys don't necessarily want those. So KDHE on this bullet point, they're not going to want it. We will want it because we'll look at it and file it. But just so you know, we're not going to send that on to KDHE. So you're not going to get an outcome 3161 from KDHE on completed annual assessments.
So KDADS does want us to send an annual.
Yes, yes,
3160.
we will file them.
KDHE does not, and the reason why is because nothing changes. They stay eligible, so we don't want them. We only want them if they're not going to be eligible, which can get tricky sometimes if somebody lost coverage, because then there's been some discussions of, oh, but they had their assessment 4 months ago, and it's like, yeah, but we don't know that. So we created a new process between KDHE and KDADS to help kind of bridge that gap. So hopefully we're not sending 3160 referrals for people that potentially will have an assessment on file, and we're sending those on to KDADS to check before we send the referrals. That is a very new process, so bear with us, because anytime you change things, there could be some that slip through the cracks. So hopefully that will reduce anything for those that have come through and caused confusion before.
Are there any questions on this page before we move to the next page?
Do we anticipate that as the assessing entity, we'd be generally using more of the right side than the left side, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. It's just, you guys can't, I mean, there's times that you learn of the death, or you learn that they went into a nursing facility, like you're trying to call them for a reassessment and they're telling you some stuff. But generally, from what we've seen, and Crystal, Danielle, you correct me if I'm wrong, most of it is this right side here that causes the closures from when you were reporting it to us.
And the admission to the institution and incarceration, all of that would be reflected in KMAP as well, or?
No. If it's in KMAP, that means we've already coded it, so you don't need to tell us about it because we already did it. You should have probably got a 3161 unless it's just a temp stay coding. Incarceration should result in a closure, but again, you won't see that. It'll be verbal what you hear from people. So you may learn of the death before we learn of the death. And so that's why we want to give you the opportunity to report it to us in case you hear about it first.
That's a question though, like if we know somebody's in a nursing facility, but it's a short-term stay, it's a rehab stay.
Yeah, you can still report that to us.
Okay, all right.
And the reason why is because sometimes we don't know that they went to the nursing facility, so we don't know that we need to code them temp stay until somebody tells us.
Got it.
So the MCOs, you all, basically any of us involved in this process, if we happen to hear of it and we don't see the coding has
It's not
changed
in
at
there.
all,
Okay.
then go ahead and
Go ahead and
report it to
report
us, because then we'll need to reach out to the facility and get some forms and get some things
Got
to
it.
get coding going.
I'm going to assume that if we know that if we're calling for the assessment, they said, well, they're in hospice. I'm sure, do you want us to let you know of that?
Well, right now it would depend on are they in a nursing
Right, are they
facility? So
inpatient
are
or
they-
Let's say they're at home.
Yeah.
Let's say they're at home.
Yeah, we wouldn't need to know that necessarily.
Okay.
Nothing changes with our coding. Our coding changes if they go into like a mental health facility, a skilled nursing facility, a swing bed. It
Right.
causes us to adjust the level of care in KIM so that facility can bill. Hospice can bill under that HCBS coding when they're at home like that. There's other, like even with nursing facility, if they're on hospice, as long as we have that nursing facility
Okay.
coding, they can bill too.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And even if they go into a nursing facility or something for rehab and it's meant to be short-term, sometimes those
Right.
then extend, and it's always good to have that on record.
Yep.
touch it.
All right, yeah, I'm like, do I touch it? Wait, did we go backwards? Did I say this already?
Section 1. Well, we're starting to each section though.
Oh, yeah, section 1 is this, basically the same thing as what it was on the 3160. I felt like I've said this before. Did I say this?
It's similar to 3160.
So fill out all identifying information, please. You can flip forward. Yeah, we just did that, so you can flip forward. There we go. This is yours now.
Okay, so any of your reported changes that impact a person's waiver eligibility comes to KDADS, and like this, the right side of the list. And then this is our review piece, and we fill it out. And then if it's something that we send on to KDHE, that is not an annual reassessment approval. And then KDHE does the final outcome. Is there any questions on this? Okay.
All right, section 4, MCO, nothing really changes for them. They can still report everything that they previously were able to report. They have their own section requesting reinstatement and termination with the effective dates, as well as listing out like if there's a potential nursing facility placement and things like that. So nothing really changes too much for them other than the visual look of how we redesigned it. And those will come straight from the MCO to KDHE. They should. Section 5 is the eligibility worker section. So this would be in response to any 3161s that we've received, or it could be that we generated a new 3161 due to taking action. Again, on 3161s, if it came from someone else, the form might look weird because it's not going to be fillable. You might see an X instead of a check mark, and it'll be kind of some free form typing it. And the closure date, unless it's related to a level of care change, meaning like nursing facility, like we have to change it. We no longer retroactively close them either. So they're approved the day that we process. They are closed the day that we process, with the exceptions of those that require the level of care change. The other exception is, which I think we've talked about this on the meetings before, we do not send 3161s when our system automatically closes someone for failure to provide a review form. What we do now is we provide reports to KDADS. It has it broken down into which waiver types, the county, things like that. And then those reports are shared with KDADS and I believe shared amongst everyone else. So you will not get a 3161 for a failure to provide a review form. It's possible that you get it for failure to complete the review process, meaning we maybe needed life insurance and need to turn it in or something like that. But just when the system closes it for absolutely no review, you will not see that form.
Yeah, you'll get, and Aaron Kelly's team does send them out to the assessing entities. So you'll get something that's called a discontinuance report. And that's usually about the first week or so of the month.
Yeah, I think she dropped them yesterday for the ones that closed May 31st. Yeah. So it's always going to be a little bit behind because we have to allow the batch to close, and the batch, when I say the batch, it's our system automatically closes them if there's records in there. And so then by the time that happens, then we have to pull a report. So I think the new ones were dropped yesterday.
So when you get those reports, make sure you file them somewhere, because if you get questions on, and you look in a file and you don't see it, chances are it'd be found on the discontinuance report.
Yep. Which also means that when you're doing reassessments, if you, again, check Kim's and they've already closed, we don't need another 3161 to tell them to close if this report's been sent, because we already told you it closed on the report. I just say that because I saw one like that yesterday. Like, oh man, we already closed it.
So if the person is closed, then they wouldn't have an annual assessment. And so that's also something that we look at as eligibility because, sometimes people don't look before they do an annual assessment, but if the person's been closed out, they don't need one.
Can I ask a question about that? So if somebody still could be open in Kim's, but be on the discontinuation report?
No, because we don't send that report until after Kim closes them.
So as long as we're always checking Kim's and KMAP, we're okay. That's going to be live.
Yeah, the only time where I could see that maybe being interesting is people who maybe are due for a functional annual assessment the same time they're due for a review for us.
Yeah.
So if you are trying to do a functional assessment in May and their review was due May 15th and they didn't turn it in, we would close them at the end of May by batch, but you're not going to get the report till June. So any of those that are their functional and their financial reviews are out on the same month, there could be some crossover there.
Got it. Okay. But you still want us to do the assessment if it's due and they're still open in both systems?
Yes.
Okay.
For annual. Yeah. And there is an overnight fee that comes from KDHE. It's called the 834 overnight feed. So that file will update anybody's waiver coding or should. So that when you look on the person's admin page on the right-hand side, like 2/3 of the way down, you'll see whether the person is still coded. But again, KMMS and KMAP is the
So our
Bible.
assessors should check. So if let's say we're scheduling something and it's a couple days, they should still check before they start the assessment. That's what I'm hearing. So we can talk about that internally, but I'm just saying there's potential where something's scheduled and 3 days later, especially what you're talking about, they may be closed out by then for some reason at the end of a month. It's going to be a small number. I'm just thinking in my head.
Yeah. And just know that there's times where, like, if we go to close the HCDS, you may see that it closed June 15th. But when you go to Kim's, you're like, but wait, I still see that they have Title 19 through June 30th. Well, they will, because the benefit plan, the big part, not the sidecar program, will end the last day of that month. Also, if monthly file has not ran yet, you won't see coverage for the following month either until the monthly file runs. So like right now, you can see eligibility for June, but you cannot see eligibility for July yet because the monthly file hasn't ran.
Right.
And it runs like 20 something or 22nd, something like that.
I have a logistics question that has nothing to do with this, but for the meetings themselves, are we going to stay on this same meeting for the KMS demonstration? No. Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I've got people asking if they need to jump over at 10 o'clock to the other meeting, and since we're all in the same room, I was just trying to make sure.
Yeah, stay on this one until we're done.
There we go. Thank you.
We're almost done. Yes.
One clarifying question. If you send a 3161 in because of loss of contact, send that to KDADS. New process. Never fails. The participant calls us within 2 weeks. And they call the assessing entity to do an assessment. Do we bounce them back to Liberty to start the process over? Or do we do something different? How long did you say?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I think that we decide to continue. They've had the options counseling is good for 365 days.
But do they need a new one to start the process over?
Yeah, they just do the assessment.
That is,
Yeah.
I don't want to get in that reinstatement stuff.
Yeah, I would.
That's a tough
discuss, yeah, leave it right into, if they've had the options counseling, it should be good for 365 days.
Okay.
So, and we're gonna put that in the waiver.
So
So it's,
what you're saying, it will probably depend on whether that 3161's been worked or not.
I agree. I think if they're still open, and
if there's.
this is not my baby, KDADS can decide, but my recommendation is if Kim still shows coverage, or if they show coverage that ended within the last like the previous month, I recommend to move forward with the reassessment so that you guys can do the reinstatement or potentially not even send us the 3161 because they're already be done. The reason why I say it like that, which I don't know if that will work with KDAD, so this will be a KDAD's decision that will have to be worked out. For KDHE policy, our policy is if the reason for closure is resolved by the month following the month of closure, we can reinstate.
Okay.
So if we don't even have the 3161 yet, or it hasn't been worked yet, meaning you still see open and active coverage, they still will have at least till the end of that next month to resolve the reason for closure. So to make it easier for people and to not fall off these waivers, that is what I recommend, but ultimately that will be a decision point with you all.
So because we have waivers that have wait lists and some of them are extensive, people need to understand that if they want to keep their waiver services, they have to be annually assessed. And that's important within the 365 days. Or they risk not being able to reaccess the waiver and being put on the wait list until the next offer round or till that new position comes available. So, as to the fine tuning, that would, I think, need to be a leadership conversation.
So it sounds like there's an open question there. We'll just let you guys let us know. So if we've already sent the 3161 because there was no contact, someone does eventually contact us and we look and their coverage isn't ended yet, assuming meaning it hasn't been worked, what do you want us to do there?
Well, if KDADS has already sent the 3161 to KDHE, we would probably, I think the best thing would be to communicate that to KDADS, to the appropriate waiver, and then ask, has this 3161 been sent to KDHE, and then we can staff it with you guys.
So we'll contact the correct company. That's thank you. That's what we needed.
Yeah, and then maybe, you guys can come up with something more. Yeah, because it happens a lot. And the reason why I'm saying it's happened a lot, because I'm cleaning up a lot of 3161s where I'm like, why do we have so many duplicates? We get one on 5/8 saying to close it, 5/12, oh, reopen it, they completed it. And so that happens all the time. We didn't even have time to close it yet. And I'll be honest, we're not going to, right now, we're not going to, our plan is not to jump on those 3161s so fast to close people. But I mean, they are, we're working stuff from May 1st. We're working the 3161s from May 1st right now. So we're not it will happen. It'll take a little bit time for it to close. But we also want to have time to reinstate people that need reinstated.
Just for one clarification, do you want it to the box or do you want it to the manager?
Send it to the waiver box.
To the box. All right.
And then if it's a reaccess request, they'll forward it to the program manager.
And then we'll hear back from the right person.
Right.
Okay.
Just want to make sure.
Everything that's about eligibility goes to the waiver email box, right? And in looking at that whole, people, they're kind of scarce. They just don't answer. Usually, some people wait until they get an actual notification saying it's closed, and then it's like, uh-oh.
And they call back,
then they panic.
know.
We know, and I assume we'll have a lot of that with the change in.
Yes.
With you also,
Yeah.
All right, next slide.
So the communication process is KDADS manages waiver eligibility. Just, succinctly, we're waiver eligibility. KDHE is financial eligibility for the Medicaid programs. And so KDADS does our waiver eligibility review for both program, the person being eligible programmatically, which usually is age and disability profile, and then functional eligibility. And then once we determine that, if there isn't a wait list or the person is like a crisis or a wait list offer, then we pass it on to KDHE, who does the financial eligibility. So waiver assessing entities and MCOs, because you work directly with clients, you're responsible for keeping the information current for the clients. And so the reason that waiver assessing entities can't approve termination, reinstatement of HCBS, and that it falls to KDADS is because we're literally waiver managers. According to the waiver and according to our role with CMS in those waivers.
So a few things here. We'll pull up the 3160 form. It's should be pretty near being final, and it will be published July 1st. We were working on just kind of some formatting, but this is what it will look like. Section 1, pretty similar to what it's been. Section 2, it's reduced just a little bit. But basically almost all the same information except assessment date was added. And then we also added a submitted to KDADS date. So that way you can put on there the date that it was submitted to KDADS, and we can, if we're ever audited or anything happens, we can kind of see the flow of the process.
So I have a question here, because I think PACE was taken out of section 2. Is PACE going to be one of the drop downs?
You want to click right here on program type. All the program types should be the same. And
Okay.
PACE is still on there.
Okay.
And if you go over here, I believe PACE should still be on here too. I think all these drop downs should align in their alphabetical order, just because, you know, my OCD, I like it to be alphabetized. I prefer it that way. So we made that change. But yeah, the submitted to KDADS date, that'll be important. And then obviously whoever completed the form, the date there too. I don't know if this is a requirement that you all will do, but what we do, just because of previous audits and things like that, we require our staff to image proof that that email was sent. Sometimes for whatever reasons, someone will say, oh, I sent that email. I go look in the mailbox. It's not there. I've submitted IT tickets a few times. I don't know, but without that proof, IT can't even go investigate it. So I have to have the proof. So we require our staff to not only image the form once they're done with it, they also image in our electronic file the proof the email was sent. So if you haven't done that, or if you don't have a tracking mechanism, I do highly recommend it. I think there's been questions before with audits where we've worked together to go look at our mailboxes to see if we've received stuff. And it just makes it easier if you have the proof. So nobody has to go on a scavenger hunt to find something from 3 years ago.
And in regards to that, the submitted to KDADS date needs to match the actual date, email date. Yeah, because those are always going to be time stamps if they're different. We could kick it back to you because they don't match.
All right, and then you want to scroll. How much I'm I know I'm not used to fancy stuff. Section here, manager approval again, cleaned it up, approved, denied waitlist. So it's very clear if it's a waitlist or not a waitlist. Sometimes there's confusions with that waitlist piece of it. So it'll be very clear, and then very clear on if they don't want specific. We'll put information in there that's help and lead us down the right path, which notice we're going to send, especially if it's a MCO information. Like I said, that didn't really change too much. And then the eligibility, KDHE eligibility section. Clear this decision on HCS. You may or may see comments on why it was denied. We shouldn't really get into life insurance. We would be saying there's releases that require at least other entities that will receive the form. But other than that, that's the 3160. Pretty much finalized. It'll be published July 1st. That is the goal. So, all right, you want to go to the 3161?
Brianna, real quick,
Yeah.
the effective date will trigger the reassessment date. Yes.
On your section, on the section 2, or what?
Or when you're financially eligible, will that trigger the reassessment? Or is it the date we did the assessment?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or so-
It's your assessment date, right? Because that assessment's only good for 365 days.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Assessment.
So,
That's what we're
Yeah.
gonna use, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they may not be eligible, like they could have an assessment date from 6 months ago, never applied.
Right.
Spent on resources, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. All right, okay, 3161. Again, section 1, pretty cut and dry. Reporting changes. So the left side reporting changes, which I also have a chart that we will go over in a second. But if you click that drop down, you only have these options: death, incarceration, moved out of state, permanent nursing facility or PRTF placement, temporary nursing facility placement. So if it's not on this list, you don't send it to KDHE, please. These are the only things that can be submitted straight to KDHE because we have to go re-verify this stuff. We can't accept third party. And then if you go to this drop down, that drop down, it says submitted to KDADS 4, and then that's why you're submitting it to KDADS. Loss of contact, completed functional assessment, or didn't, or what have you. So pretty cut and dry there. I mean, I think it simplifies it. Then KDADS, they got the reinstatement check mark, the terminate check mark, and then their reason, they'll have all the reasons. I believe all the reasons, because you could learn of death. Yeah. So they have all the reasons because they could learn of the death and stuff too. So they could initiate the form. Not likely, but they could. MCO has all the reasons, and then KDHE will have all the reasons as well. So the drop downs all align. The reinstatement date, if there is a reinstatement date, KDADS will put it here, and as long as it complies with KDHE policy and they're financially eligible, that reinstatement date should align or at least close gaps. That's what reinstatement means in our world, is there's no gap in coverage. The 3161 reported change chart, again, this will be published on the website. And I know we're like out of time, but some of you may be familiar with the lovely chart that we had before. It was overwhelming. It was a lot, but there wasn't any other way for us to simplify it. We now submit the assessment has one tab, KDADS has their own tab, MCO and KDHE. And then each one of these reasons that are in the drop downs and all the drop downs, the X is no, don't submit to KDHE. Green check mark is yes, submit to KDADS. So if it's a green check mark in this column here or row here, that means you can send it to KDHE, which should align with the reporting change drop down. And then everybody has their own section. Just for giggles, I'll have you click that. We don't have a chart for KDHE because we have to send all of them. There is no specifics. The only exception is when batch discontinues them. If they turn it in and we can reinstate, then we should be sending a 3161 reinstatement. There's been a little confusion on that. So hopefully that has improved and we are sending those reinstatements. Because we don't actually send that discontinuous, but we will send that reinstatements. Questions?
Can you get a copy of the chart?
The chart will be published on the KDHE website. You want to go to the KDHE website? And I'm going to show you how to get to it right now. Plus, this is recorded, so you can always go back and do it because it will always be in this place. Any new form should always be in the same place. So, you click this button here. It says Can Care. And you'll scroll all the way down to where it says seniors and just, Seniors and disabled, wait, nope, not, oh yeah. There you go, proceed. You click that link, learn more link, and then proceed to site. Or maybe that's a, oh, it did that funny thing. Okay, if it does this to you, okay, sorry, if it does this to you, hover over this. Click policy and eligibility. And then, and it is a lot of steps, but anytime we republish stuff, it's possible that these links might break, but you'll click KDHE eligibility I didn't touch it. Okay,
That's your energy.
scroll down. All right, these 3160s, 3161s, you want to click that forms link. And then you'll click external. Right. Scroll down. So it's right here. ES 3160, ES 3161, and KC 3161. All those will be replaced come July 1st with the things that were presented. So that is where staff should pull it. They should not be saving them to their desktops or doing that or repurposing. Like repurposing and they forget. That's like when you check this. That's where we should be pulling. We preach that to our staff too, but yeah.
Back to the 3161 itself.
Yep.
Can we see those little drop downs again real quick?
Yep.
It's always great when sharing your screen, right? You try to click on something and it's like, no.
It freaks me out.
All right, the drop downs here.
Yeah.
So this is the reporting change.
Okay.
That means it can come to KDHE.
Can we look at the KDADS one again? Quick?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the question at the chat about incarceration need to go to both. And I did not see it on both of the drop downs. So
Yeah, that's the reporting change.
Okay.
Just KDHE. Because what will happen is KDHE will review, verify. We will complete our section of the 3161 if it does result in a closure, and then we send it to the MCO. KDADS can see you all.
can go back to the chart. Apparently that is where the confusion might be. It's a double check mark there in incarceration.
I can fix that. It'll be an X right here. Can you, Crystal, can you take a note of that or send me an email on that so I don't forget that? All right. Anything else?
I asked a question just about just the forms in general, the form site. So is that where we should be pulling all forms? So like the release of information on there, the PPOs, I don't know if the PPOC's on there. Or...
PPOC won't be on there. If you need a release of information form, like a facilitator form, because you're helping a consumer go through the application process, you can pull it straight from our website. That would be the facilitator form, the best form if you're literally just an agency facilitating. Normally, agencies don't sign up as medical reps per se. They're usually just facilitators. And when you're a facilitator, you have it's 6 months or through the date that the coverage is approved or denied, depending on how we get it. Right? Depends on the form and how the form's filled out, or if it's on the app.
So if you're,
Yeah, on the form. The application has a spot where you can list the facilitator too. So either one of those works. It's just the form allows a little bit more potential extended time to be a facilitator. But yes, you can pull all those forms. This is a public website. Actually, anybody, our consumers, some of them like to get in here and then appeal things. It's real fun. But anybody can get in here and look at the stuff. The releases on there. There is a information form which is different than a facilitator. But in our world, if you do the release of information, you say yes, you want it in writing. You still kind of like we're still going to send you copies of notices. if you're a facilitator or a release.
So in regards to the forms that you guys are going to upload with the assessment, it is a KDADS release, which ours are approved by our legal, and it's on our website. And the PPOC will also be under provider forms, I believe.
Do you need a copy of the LOC outcome?
I believe that's still part of the contract, right? It's in, I believe it's in policy that's.
Like I said, the 3160s, my guess is majority of them come from KDHE. So we would have already initiated the form, so you don't have to go pull a new form for that. But it's anyone that you would be initiating, the form should be from that website, just to clarify that.
So, it's that information KDADS, and ours is specific to waiver eligibility assessment.
Yeah, so you can use these forms. If you're wanting to be a facilitator. What's that phone number? Do you know that phone number?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
They're at the 3904.
No, that's just, I mean, that's a release. That's not the facilitator form though. I don't remember the name of the form right offhand.
We can look for it. Does it say facilitator in the title? All right, we'll look for it.
KC, is it a KC something?
And that's only when someone doesn't have coverage and we just need to help them get
What
coverage.
section is that? Scroll to the top.
Yeah, we might have to go to a different section, but it is on the website. There's forms, there's financial information, there's the F8 appendix, which is like the income limits. There's a link to our policy. There's a lot of information on here for anyone who maybe is an administrative case manager or assisting somebody. I don't know who's doing that. I'm wrong on who's doing that, but this website has a lot of information that can be used.
Paula, can I have you about a 3160? If it comes in as a referral for a physical disability waiver, and the assessor goes out to see them, and they find out in the process they have a history of stroke or brain injury, can they switch to the brain injury waiver assessment and then turn in the 3160 with our section filled out with the correct waiver of choice?
Okay. What you'll need to look at is, before you go out to do an assessment, is in KMIS, the assessment, and on the forms tab, what their history is to make sure that they don't already have one. But if they've gone through the VOC process, whether they have gone.
Sometimes
It could be.
they don't understand though,
Right.
particularly stroke. Sometimes people don't understand that's a brain injury.
So when you're assessing, if you went out to assess for PD, but it looks like it's going to be a different assessment too.
Right, that's what.
It's a completely different tool.
Right, and this was actually an assessor question in a class we had earlier this week, so.
You would have to be very careful to make sure that 3160 reflects which one you actually did. Because,
Yes.
if we see PD and we go in and check when there's a BI, we're going to reject the
Well, and I
PD.
know sometimes with KDHE, they
Yep.
don't know if the person's had a brain injury.
Right.
And so they
Yeah.
push it through as PD, which I
Correct.
understand. And so we would just fill out our section appropriately with the
Yep.
one that we did.
Yep, we will default to PD. There's not a lot of space or ability for consumers to list what their we don't need their medical conditions.
Right.
We see social security records, we send stuff to PMDT, they get their medical. For the financial piece, we don't necessarily see it. And to be honest with you, we don't necessarily reach our consumers by phone a lot. So we will always default to PD.
Yeah.
There's been times too that this might be a good time to bring this up. There's been times too that you realize, oh, this should be an IDD one. And before those there's been confusion, we ask, please don't send them back to KDHE saying, nope, this needs to be IDD. Send them to KDADS to let them know it needs to be IDD, and KDADS will take it from there. Sending it back and forth, all it does is cause delays for the consumer, which, I mean, we know IDD has a wait list anyways, but it's possible that maybe they've had an assessment, they're on the wait list, or something else is going on. So you, instead of routing those back, send them forward. We want to try to send whatever we can forward without causing hardship for our consumers.
Is there a particular box that one goes to?
KDADS.IDD@ks.gov. And they do all the IDD referrals, and then they route out.
Just
Kristen?
have an update to the facilitator form. If you go back out, scroll out one level.
Just push the back button. There you go.
It's gonna be in the appendix section. Then it's gonna be in the release of information. Facilitator authorization form and the MedRid forms is too.
Anything else?
I have a quick question with KDADS. I don't know if you guys are hearing, but I was thinking about the CARE scores. Are they gonna start? Are you guys ramping up to change that portion? That the ERC is not gonna do the CARE scores anymore?
No, that's not part of this contract at all, right? Yeah, this is completely separate.
Okay.
Yeah, completely separate.
Okay.
That's okay. It's okay.
But a clarification would be that even if a person has a current care assessment in the system, that does not qualify them for a waiver. So they have to have a waiver assessment to see if they qualify for that waiver.
Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
Yeah. And then tell everybody to go to the new meeting.
Yeah, that way.
There you go.
There we go. So 5 minutes.
Five minutes.